Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. I almost forgot what we were then for a second, but this is episode 64 of season 2024. Also, episode 64 of the podcast ever. End of the AFL season, we're going to wrap up grand final week coming up. In this episode, we'll be going through everything that happened on the day and a few other things related to grand final week. We'll have a look at all the breaking news from the week because there's plenty of free agency talk, so we'll go through some of that as well. And we'll have a look at how my predictions from the start of the season went. Spoiler alert, not great. And we'll have one final look at how my AFL men's footy tipping went this year. It had a bit of a rough finish, but we'll get through that in due course. Thanks for tuning in. This is, as I said, episode 64. Let's jump straight into it. And while we're jumping into it, don't forget that this podcast goes live twice a week on YouTube and Spotify at the moment, and for the foreseeable future. We're doing 2 episodes a week, continuing. First episode each week is on the AFLW, and then the second episode will be on AFL Men's. So over the next few weeks, we'll be running through free agency, trade week, and then once draft comes up, we'll also look into that. We're also going to have, in this episode, obviously, a look back at my predictions. Next week, we're going to have, top players ranked by position across the AFL for the year. I'm working on that as we speak. And also, we're going to have my top 50, a look at my top 50 from the start of the year, compare it to the top 50 at the moment. And also, next week's episode, I am planning on doing a final grade for each team. If you haven't already, check out the YouTube channel. There is season reviews for every single club that I did as they got knocked out. So we'll be using some of that information plus some new information as well in next week's podcast to rank every team with a grade for how well they went in 2024. Did they pass? Did they fail? Tune in to find out next week. Without any further ado, let's have a look at the AFL Grand Final week. It was a big one. It was Sydney. It was Brisbane. At the MCG last Saturday afternoon, both of the last 2 losers in the grand finals going up against each other in this one. And in all honesty, it wasn't even close. Final scores was 120 for Brisbane, just 60 for Sydney, so not a great performance from them, really, when you think about it. When you look at it, they got kind of smacked from about halfway in the second quarter. They were never back in it after that point. First quarter was competitive. Brisbane were the better team, but we kind of expected them to jump out of the gates pretty well. They weren't massively in front at quarter time. But after that, it kind of got pear-shaped pretty quick. So it was 8 points to Brisbane at quarter time. And then I think with about 10 minutes to go, less than 10 minutes to go, in fact, in the second quarter, Brisbane were only 11 points up. And then all of a sudden, they banged on 6 quick ones to round out the end of the second quarter and went in massively up at halftime, 73-27, and then they came out in the third quarter and finished them off. Sydney won the final quarter, but the game was well and truly over by that point. And disappointing end to Sydney's season. Meanwhile, Brisbane get their revenge for losing a tight grand final last year. Quick look through some of the stats. If you haven't already, there's a video on the YouTube doing a full breakdown of the game, as well as player ratings for every a player rating for everyone on the ground, which we won't go through all of it in this episode, but we will skim over bits and pieces. Brisbane's accuracy was great compared to their normal. That's probably the thing that cost them the most. Their defensive efficiency was outstanding, as was their forward efficiency. And their disposal efficiency as well. So if you look at their forward efficiency and their disposal efficiency, it was their second and third best ranked game of the season. only beaten by the time that they beat Richmond by 119 points. So, an outstanding achievement to do that, and to do it on the biggest stage is massive. They only just won the inside 50 count, maybe not as much as we expected, but that didn't end up mattering. Clearances were pretty close, but the scoring from centre clearances in this game were insane. We'll get through to that in a minute. Uncontested footy, Brisbane just dominated it all day long. They tackled hard as well, which is not an area of the game that they dominate typically. They certainly did here. And they also dominated the turnover game, having 9 less turnovers than their opposition. And once again, not an area that they typically dominate, but they certainly did in this one. So, Brisbane Lions 2024 Premiership team, which means they currently hold both the men's and women's premierships, which is an incredible achievement for the Brisbane Lions Football Club. So, here's a breakdown a bit more of the quarter-by-quarter scoring. As you can see, plus 8 in the first quarter, plus 38 in the second quarter, which gave them a 46-point lead at half-time for the Lions. And from that point, it was always going to be difficult for Sydney to come back, and they just didn't. Plus 27 in the third quarter for Brisbane, before Sydney kicked some consolation goals to win the last quarter by 13. Scoring from score sources, that's what I was looking for. Neither team scored at all from kick-ins all day. However, stoppages, Brisbane 48, Sydney 33, so a really good performance there from Brisbane. Not terrible by Sydney, but certainly really good from Brisbane. Turnovers though, look at that number. 72 points scored by Brisbane in this one from turnovers is a huge return. An area of the game that Sydney is typically very good at, and Brisbane tore them to shreds. As we said, they were plus 9 for intercepts, Brisbane, and they turned that into 72 points. And Sydney just couldn't do the same. And then whereabouts they won the ball when they scored. From the defensive half, 41 points is huge from Brisbane. Really good return there. 12 points from Sydney is quite poor. Forward half, 47 points was really good as well from Brisbane to Sydney's 28. And then scoring from the centre bounce, that's the big one right there. 32 points, 5 goals, 2 Brisbane got from the centre bounce. Typically, that's about 3 times as much as they normally score from the centre bounce in a game. So that's a huge return. Sydney's was 20 points, which is also outstanding and about almost double what they typically do. But they're still 2 goals behind Brisbane in that area. And it was just a domination, really, from them. I don't have any graphics for best players. I probably do if I went looking hard enough, but because I would have made them for the previous things. But we'll just run through some of the best players on the ground. We'll start with Brisbane. They won. They've got most of the best players on the ground in this one. We'll start. Norm Smith medalist was Will Ashcroft. Outstanding game from him. He had 30 touches, kicked a goal, 11 score involvements. He did a lot of things right in this game. Won the Norm Smith. On the day, I had him on top on the first watch of the game. Since then, I have watched the game again a couple times. And Lachie Neale's now the person that I thought was best on ground. He had 35 touches, 18 of them contested. He had 7 intercept possessions. He had 11 score involvements, which was only 1 off the best on the ground. 8 marks, 6 centre clearances. He also had 3 stoppage clearances, 6 inside 50s, 3 tackles. He just did it all. Let's be honest, he had an outstanding game. One of the best games of the season for him. It was really, really good. I think underrated game in this one was Joey Danaher. We're going to talk about him a bit later as well, but he was really good and could have blown this game out of the absolute water in that first half. He finished with 16 touches, 2 goals, 4 behinds. So if he had kicked a little straighter, they would have been even better off. Brisbane. He had 12 score involvements, which was a fantastic effort. 4 clearances. He was in 22 ruck contests as well as the backup ruckman. Did really well. Then you have the 2 big goal scorers in this game. in Kai Lohmann, he had 15 touches, 4 goals, 3 of them in the first half, and was really, really good. And the other big goal scorer of the game was Callum Archie. He had 14 touches, 4 goals, 2 goal assists, 11 score involvements. A really good performance from him throughout. Other good players, I think Josh Dunkley was also an underrated performer in this game. He had 21 touches, 10 of those contested. Turned it over a little bit, but was really good at defensive pressure. He got 4 clearances, 11 tackles. Was an outstanding effort from him. But you could go through the whole of the Brisbane lineup, in all honesty, and they all played well. Jared Berry was good. McCluggage was solid. Logan Morris got subbed out in the fourth quarter, but was well and truly the best tall forward outside of Joe Danaher, who kind of plays multiple roles on the ground. Certainly way better than the Sydney tall forwards. So he did really well as a first-year player. Zorko did his job absolutely. Cam Rayner was really good, got into the game as it went on. Charlie Cameron was pretty quiet, but in the end didn't need to do much. Connor McKenna didn't get much game time. He only played 12 minutes. Fletcher was good. Hipwood, solid. Harris Andrews was outstanding. He didn't do anything wrong all day, really. Just wasn't needed all that much, let's be honest. But he did what he needed to do, kept that back line going really well. Darcy Ford as a ruckman coming in, having not played much this year, did a really good job. He was beaten, no doubt, by Brodie Grundy, but it was always going to be a tough ask. Nobody was expecting him to go out there and dominate Brodie Grundy, but he held his spot well there. Zach Bailey was solid. Lester was good. Starkovic, I think, was outstanding, especially when you consider last year's grand final. Jack Payne did his job. Answorth and Wilmot were also good. I think that's everyone from Brisbane that I have mentioned. Outstanding performance from them. Across, as a team, they did everything right. There's no doubt about it. Jump into Sydney Swans. Brodie Grundy, I think, was their best player on the day. He should have been, obviously, going up against a backup ruckman most of the day, or all of the day. He didn't absolutely tear the game to shreds, but he did play well. He had 22 touches, 18 of them contested. He had 4 intercepts. He had 5 score involvements, which was only 1 off Sydney's best in terms of score involvements for this game. 7 clearances, 36 hit-outs, 15 of those to advantage, 3 inside 50s, 2 tackles. So he was good. James Rowbottom, I think, also played a really good game, 18 touches, 30 pressure acts, 10 clearances, 4 tackles. Was really good. I think he was the best of their midfielders, in all honesty. Robbie Fox was solid. He played a good game, 21 touches, 2 goal assists. Next up, I had Nick Blakey. He ran well. He wasn't bad by any stretch. He turned it over a few times, but he was pretty solid throughout with 17 touches. And Chad Warner was solid as well. I mean, he wasn't at his best. There's no doubt about it. The big three for Sydney midfield all were below their best, I think. But he was probably the best of the three. He had 21 touches and a goal, and 656 metres gained. So he wasn't terrible. We'll run through quickly the rest of the team. Hayden McLean was barely cited, in all honesty. He only had 7 touches and 1 goal assist. Isaac Heaney, another grand final that he just hasn't performed in. He didn't play in the last quarter. He's apparently been injured for the whole final series, but his first 2 finals were outstanding, where he was best on ground. He followed this up with one of the, certainly towards the bottom end of the players on the ground. He ended with 14 touches, kicked a goal, I think in the second quarter. Might have been the third quarter, I don't even know anymore. But yeah, just didn't do enough of it, really, after what we've seen from him. Logan McDonald was clearly injured and might as well have not been there. He got subbed out in the first half, or at halftime, whenever it was, with 1 kick to his name, and not much else to say for him. Cunningham was quiet, only the 8 touches. Hayward kicked the first goal of the match, barely cited after that, only ended with 6 touches. Too many of these players for Sydney, just not even getting close to double figures in disposals. Papley kicked a goal straight after Hayward's goal and then basically didn't do much after that, finished with 10 touches and not much else. Florent was okay. He had plenty of the ball, 24 touches. Wasn't their worst. Certainly wasn't their worst. He was mid-range for them. Braden Campbell started sub. He came on, obviously, and still played 52 minutes. So he got a bit of game time. Didn't do much in that, though. Just the 4 disposals. James Jordan was very quiet, 13 touches. Errol Gordon, as we said, he's one of the big 3. He's had an outstanding season, but he was pretty quiet in this. He had 24 touches, but 18 of them, were uncontested. He didn't use the ball that well. He ran hard all day, but I don't think he was that great. Rampy, he got beaten a few times. It wasn't his best day either. Luke Parker was pretty quiet throughout, but ended up with 3 goals from 14 touches. I think he kicked 3 goals from 6 touches in that last quarter. So up until that point, he hadn't done a heap. McInerney was solid, but certainly wasn't great. Tom McCartan, he played okay. He was under siege a lot, though. Matt Roberts was okay. Joel Amartey was barely sighted, only ended with 7 touches. Could have kicked a goal. The first goal, he got a free kick, but Will Hayward took the advantage and kicked the goal, so he missed out on that disposal. Would he have kicked the goal? I don't know. It was 45 metres out on a reasonable angle, so it wouldn't have been an easy shot. Robbie Fox, we went through him, but he was good. Lewis Melican was solid, no doubt about it. He wasn't great. He had 5 intercepts, but he was... and only 6 disposals, so 5 out of his 6 possessions were intercepts, which was good, and he went at 100% efficiency, so that's solid. And Jake Lloyd was okay, 19 touches. Wasn't outstanding, no doubt about it. Was not the best. So you can pretty much say good things about almost every Brisbane player, as you'd expect when they win by 60 points, and a lot of negatives for Sydney in this one. We'll now quickly have a look at my predictions for that game and how they went. So first off, I tipped Sydney, which means I got the last game of the season wrong. I went 135 out of 216 for the year. I did really poorly in the final series. Over the last 3 weeks of the finals, I think I only got 2 right. 2 out of 5, maybe. I don't know what it was, but I had a really bad finish to the year, so we got that one wrong. So obviously we got the margin wrong by a long way. Norm Smith, Isaac Heaney played terribly. I took the safe option of going Isaac Heaney. If you're on the YouTube channel, if you're not there already, I did do a preview video before it where I gave some roughies for Norm Smith. Well, not so much roughies, but some other picks. I don't know if I said Will Ashcroft, to be honest. I definitely said Lachie Neale, who, in all honesty, probably did deserve it. First goal scorer, we were wrong. We went Zach Bailey, and it ended up being Will Hayward. And Sydney got the first 2, with Papley kicking one 30 seconds later. But then it was a pretty rough day for the rest of the day for the Swans, because they only managed 7 more goals. Meanwhile, Brisbane kicked 18 after that. So, rough day for anyone, Sydney Swans players, supporters, and everyone in between. So that's how grand final day went. Absolute thrashing for Brisbane. Congrats to them for the 2024 premiership. We'll now jump into how my predictions went from the start of the season, and then we'll finish the episode with the latest in the news of the world of AFL. This is the final ladder positions after finals, so I'll put them where they finish if you include finals. That's the order they're in. Pre-season prediction is obviously where I put them at the start of the year. Margin is how far off I was. Starting at the top, we got one right, and that's the only one we got right. Brisbane Lions, we predicted them for the premiership. I mean, it's not the biggest prediction of all time, seeing they were runners-up last year. They were always going to probably be close, and we were right in that. They got the win, so we'll take that because we didn't get many other success stories in here. Sydney finished second. We had them fourth, so I mean that's pretty close in all honesty. Port Adelaide we had coming eighth and they finished third, so we were a fair way off there. I thought they might have dropped a bit more, but their home and away season was really good. Geelong, I had them missing finals, in all honesty. They surprised me quite a bit early season. I jumped on their bandwagon by about round 4 or so, but I don't know. Their team surprised a lot of people, I think, just in the fact that it wasn't a lot of people that weren't expected to do great this year did really well, came into the team as untried players in the AFL and really succeeded. GWS were pretty close. I had them coming 6th. They came 5th. So pretty close there. Hawthorn, we were miles off. I had them coming second bottom. I even listened to my pre-season video just the other day, and I was like, there's not many positive signs for them. And in all honesty, after 5 or 6 weeks, I was looking pretty accurate with that, but they turned it on in the second half of the year and ended up 6th, so we're way off there. Bulldogs, we weren't too bad. We said they were going to miss finals and finish 10th. They finished 7th. They did okay. They were hot and cold. With 4 or 5 weeks to go, they were outside the 8, but they really got the end of the season going really well. Carlton, we had coming 3rd, and with a month to go in the season, they looked like they were going to finish close to top 4, if not top 4, and then they didn't win another game. They finished 8th, and I was a little bit off. Collingwood, they just had a rough season. They started poorly. They had a couple bad spots through the middle of the season. They finished 9th. I had them coming 2nd. Just a bad call from me, in all honesty. Fremantle, we had coming 15th. I didn't like what I was seeing from them early days, but they certainly showed some good football this year. Probably, arguably, should have made finals. They lost their last 4 weeks in a row to miss finals, so disappointing end to them. Essendon were pretty close. We said 13, they finished 11. I count that close enough. St Kilda, we had 11th, they finished 12th, so once again, accurate enough. Gold Coast, we said 16, they did slightly better than that, 13. Melbourne was a bad one. They really fell apart towards the end of the season. We had them coming 5th, and with about 8 weeks to go, that was certainly an option, but they barely won a game coming home. Finished up 14th on the ladder, so we're a fair way off there. Adelaide were the team that I thought was going to move into the finals. They had a good season last year, but this year they just never got going, and they finished 15th. West Coast, I had them wooden spooners. They finished 16th. They showed some really good football. Their worst was pretty bad, but their best was goodish, so they did slightly better than I expected. North Melbourne, I had coming 14th. I expected a little bit more from them this year, in all honesty, and they did not show it. They finished 17th. And Richmond, I had 12th. That looks really bad because they finished wooden spooners, so I'll cop that one. That's on me. However, I think their season could have got off to a much better start. Round 1, they could have beaten Carlton. Didn't quite. Just fell short of the win there. Round 4 against St Kilda, they probably should have won that game. They were 5 goals up and just threw it away. Then injuries hit and they just kept losing and really struggled to be competitive. Yeah, they got some players back in the second half of the season, but their season was well and truly gone. So I still think that they probably weren't the worst at the start of the season. I don't feel terrible about that prediction going that far wrong, in all honesty. So that's my final ladder my final ladder. That's how my predictions went. Some of the awards that I did predictions for. Brownlow, I said Bont was going to win it. He did not win it. In fact, he polled really poorly. But he did play very well. I still had him as the top player of the AFL this year, just ahead of Heaney. Neither of them won the Brownlow. Umpires didn't like his games. It's weird because I think last year he was very similar level to this year. And this year he didn't poll well at all, whereas last year he came second. So, make it make sense. I don't know if you can. I also said a smoky for the Brownlow was Jordan Dawson. He polled okay, but Adelaide didn't win enough games, and he he didn't play good enough, consistent enough. I don't think he had a good season. He was probably close to their best player, but a little bit of a disappointing result there. Rising star, I went Harley Reid. He obviously didn't finish anywhere in the Rising Star. He did get nominated, but got suspended, so he wasn't eligible. So, I mean, if he was, he 100% was going to win that award. There's no doubt about it. He was 100% the best first-year player and the best eligible Rising Star. Clearly, second best would have been Sam Darcy. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They would have been 1 and 2 had they both not been suspended. I don't think there was any other predictions I did pre-season because I did not do Coleman medal, and I don't think I did anything else other than saying Brisbane were going to win premiership and West Coast were going to win the wooden spoon, and we got one of those two right. We're going to have a look now over at the latest in AFL news, and we're going to start with the retirement news of yesterday if you're watching this when it comes out. Joe Danaher has announced his retirement from AFL. He won the premiership on the weekend and he goes out on an absolute high, so massive congratulations to him. Incredible career, finished on a massive high. Interestingly, that means that the history of AFL, this is the most random stat I've heard today, maybe even this season to be honest, not once has a premiership team ever played together again in full, which is our amazing thing when you think about it. Like, all these teams that have gone and won multiple premierships in a row, never once has a team that's won a premiership ever played together again. And it's happened again, no matter what happens in the off-season. Joe Danaher has retired, so he's not going to be back. So it happens again. I mean, I guess it's not that surprising. Players come in and out of teams every year, but it still surprised me, in all honesty. So yeah, that's the biggest news, I guess, of this week. There's some free agency news going around. There's Josh Battles expected to go to Hawthorn. Harry Perryman has requested to go to Collingwood. Isaac Cumming has requested to go to Adelaide, so GWS losing a couple there. St Kilda also losing Josh Battle, and also telling him not to come to their best and fairest night the other night, which was interesting. He finished third in their best and fairest and was told not to turn up. It'll be interesting to see where certain players, what picks teams get for them. St Kilda will either get pick 8 or 19, depending on a few things. Giants probably getting round 1 pick for Perryman, which would be pick 14 or 15. Cumming will probably give him a second round pick, more than likely, which will be in like 30s or 40s. Nothing too exciting. A few other players that potentially are changing clubs. We haven't heard much yet in this regard, but they probably will be moving. Nick Haynes from GWS to Carlton, Tom Campbell from St Kilda to Melbourne, and Himmelberg likely from Adelaide to Gold Coast. Jack Graham from Richmond heading west. Richmond exile is happening. GWS apparently are having an exile at the moment as well. Looks like Geelong are going to pick up a few players with potential for Clayton Oliver. That would be absurd if they figure out a way to trade for Clayton Oliver, in all honesty. It would be absurd. And man, would that make that Geelong midfield even better. Bailey Smith has requested a trade to Geelong as well, so that'll be interesting. And Jack Martin, who got delisted from Carlton, is just apparently going to go and sign for Geelong. So an absolute free kick there for Geelong. Carlton, I was surprised they just delisted Jack Martin and didn't try to see if they could get something for him. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't worth the risk. Anyway, that's most of the news. There's a few other things moving around. Obviously, we haven't started trade week yet. Free agency officially starts tomorrow, I think, or in the next couple of days, and trade week starts next week. So next week's episode will probably have a bit more news on actual deals that have happened. At the moment, it's just plans and what players are wanting. So we'll see what happens over the next week, and we'll probably have more information in regards to signings and trades and stuff next week. Also, next week's episode, as I said, I'm going to try and do, there'll be the top 50 players. Will either be next week or the week after. Not top 50 next week. Top 50 will be the week after that. Top players by position will be next week. And also team grades for the year, as well as a look at any news that's come through from free agency and trades up to that point. So that'll be next Friday on YouTube and Spotify. So check that out. It'll be episode 66 of the All Aussie Rules Podcast. Episode 65 will be coming to you on Monday with a wrap-up of all of the AFLW action from whatever round they're up to, round 6. My brain is definitely working great. There's been 3 games so far this weekend already for round 6. The 4th one is happening right now. It's Melbourne GWS. Currently Melbourne are winning by 3 points. Check back for episode 65 and week 6 of the AFLW. If you haven't got into the AFLW already, give it a chance. It's entertaining. I have been really getting into it this year. It's a different style of football than the men's competition in many ways, but no less entertaining. So check it out. There's some absolute stars playing in that league, and follow your favourite team across into the AFLW. Hopefully you go for one of the good teams in Brisbane, Adelaide, or North Melbourne. They're probably the top 3 at the moment. But yeah, that's everything I've got for you here on All Aussie Rules episode 64 of the podcast. Don't forget to check out the social medias. We got Twitter /X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. As I said, podcast goes live, YouTube, Spotify, plenty of other YouTube content every week. Still undecided exactly how that's going to look through the off season, but I'll try and still do regular uploads. So thanks for tuning in. This is the All Aussie Rules Podcast, and I hope to see you again on the next one. Peace.